Hi, my name is Tiffany, and I'm a recovering lead chaser. When new leads pop up, I'm all over it. Meanwhile, the real opportunities sitting in my pipeline get neglected. Does this sound familiar? Look, here's the mistake that I see all the time. So, salespeople chase the newest bright, shiny object, another lead, while the real opportunities sit overlooked in their pipeline. So here's what happens. I'll relate it to gardening, right? So we keep planting seeds, but never cultivate the environment to allow that seed to grow. So weeds end up taking over and choking out what we planted. And because we don't see that seedling struggling to take root among the weeds, we either plant more or we get discouraged, right? So guess what happens? There's lots of activity and noise, lots of distractions or weeds, and very little harvest. So, I recently worked with a rep who loved chasing new leads. Every week, his pipeline looked full, but it was so full of noise, he couldn't see where he should spend his time. Right? It was easier to chase a new lead, hoping it might be an easier close. So look, whenever an opportunity was stalled, he'd end up moving on, convinced that the next lead was the one. So rather than tending the garden that he had and pulling out the weeds surrounding his real opportunities to allow them to flourish. So basically, he was spending all of his time and energy starting conversations and none of his time finishing them. So when we finally slowed down and put a process in place for properly tending the garden, something amazing happened. So we tightened up his qualification, asked tougher questions earlier in the process, and started moving those deals forward or moving them out. Right? Suddenly, his bloated pipeline ended up shrinking by half. But what was fascinating is his close rate doubled, right? So I use the garden analogy because it's so true. When I started gardening, I would plant so many seeds. It was tough to keep up with. And then when the weeds started growing like mad, I got overwhelmed, not knowing where to start or spend my time. And so eventually they overtook my garden and choked out many of my good tomato plants. So some stayed strong, right? But it was because of their own resilience, not because of my work tending the garden properly. Sales is the exact same way. So chasing leads feels exciting, but real growth comes from sticking with the opportunities that you already have, asking the tough questions and guiding the buyers to a decision, whether it's yes or no. So let me ask you, is your team chasing new leads because they don't know how to tend the ones in their proverbial garden? Or are they nurturing the ones already in the pipeline and creating an environment for them to properly take root and produce good fruit? So, planting more seeds and chasing more leads doesn't guarantee growth. Creating and following a solid process that allows them to grow and bear fruit does. So, if your pipeline is bloated with deals that have no clear future, we should talk. Look, my passion is building sales systems that help your team help more people, have more fun, and make more money. So, it's simple, but it is not easy. But remember, growth only happens on the other side of our comfort zone.